Oh, I don't get a 3, 2, 1 timer when I go live. Dang nabbit. Hello. Good now to all of you out there in the beta-verse, in the beta universe. I'm Ryan Erickson. I am here with my partner in provocation, I think. There's no crime to provocation, Mr. Niels Fly. Oh, goodness gracious. Megan, also, Niels is here. Also in the background is the lovely and talented Megan Elizabeth Morris, who is providing and has been providing through the Intuitive Network, our StreamYard platform. So thumbs up to Megan Elizabeth. And hey, I'll put she pops in for 10 seconds. And we were just having a riff in our session before. The inimitable author, citizen, and force for the common good, Peter Block, who is not quite at his desk yet, because I can kind of see him in the background. But today, maybe he is in the back. He's kind of peeking out. Oh, I'll bring him in here, Megan. Hey, Peter. Hello. Is Peter paused? Oh my gosh.
That can happen. It just happened to me, by the way. I started to stream to LinkedIn or something, and it kind of threw me out of the session, and I had to come back again. So that's but well, until Peter is back, maybe we might mention this is the 63rd episode of our little podcast here, and it's our, I counted today, it's our 11th guest. The 11th time we have a guest in this podcast. Wow. And I think Peter Block is our most famous, prominent, fab guest ever.
Yeah.
When I had a conversation with him a couple of days ago, he told me that one of his books, his most famous book, Flawless Consulting, sold over 1 million copies. I was kind of taken aback. That's really? Like Dua Lipa, Beyonce stuff, I think.
Dare you say the Taylor Swift of organizational development?
Yes, Peter Block is certainly the Taylor Swift of social dynamics, so to speak. So we're happy to have him, right? And I think we pondered having him as a guest for half a year until we dared to address him. So yeah, if he's here.
And I think he's back. He's coming back, maybe. He's popping in here. It says his devices aren't connected for some godforsaken reason. I don't know why.
Okay. We can wait. We can wait another.
But so that was not just a photo of Peter in the bottom. For those of you who might be wondering if we were trying to pull shenanigans on you, no. Peter was here. Niels had a conversation with him recently. I went to coffee with him in Cincinnati. Where he lives,
maybe until he's back, until he has done. He is back.
There he goes. Hello,
Peter's back. That's great. The star of the show is back. Hello, Peter.
Sorry, I don't know what happened, but I had to go out and come back again, and blah blah blah.
We have done this a couple of times over the course of the other episodes. It has happened a lot, technical breakdowns of all kinds and so on. Yeah.
There's a higher power that knows who should be on the show and who shouldn't.
Yes.
Of a higher power.
Today I noticed that Peter, just to do a useless bridge to another topic, you mentioned higher powers. I saw that you also co-authored a book with Walter Brueggemann, who is a scholar of the Old Testament.
Yes, he's a great friend of mine. He and John McKnight. Yeah, he changed my life.
Yes, you mentioned that on your website as well.
He found us, and he decided that the wilderness, another name for the wilderness after the Israelites left Pharaoh, was neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And John and I spent John and I've joined him, spent our time, realized the neighborhood matters. And the modern wilderness is the neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay. It used to be home, it used to be a place. And so Walter's become an amazing friend.
Okay. Yes. I mean, he's a testament, one of the world's most important scholars of the Old Testament.
Yes.
I have such a scholar in my family, but I wasn't aware that there was a superstar in the field, Walter.
And he.
Yes.
he makes the Old Testament open to interpretation.
Yes.
So he's an Old Testament scholar that's not interested in certainty.
Very good. Yes, yes, yes.
I asked him, what about God? I asked him once, Walter, what about Cain and Abel? Okay. He said, well, God's still in recovery for that mistake. How do you know a like that?
Very nice, very nice. So, not sure. Ryan, do you want to start this officially?
Well, there was the only official kind of thing I wanted to do is have us all blast in for a moment. We blast in, have maybe take 10 minutes to, I want to know more, my curiosity, where it is right now. How did you discover Peter's work? And Peter, maybe reflect on that if you wish. And then what context would Peter, would you like to bring based on what Neil says? So how did we meet? How did we fall in love, shall we say?
And what's our origin story?
Yes.
What's our origin story? Then we'll have some half-hour minute, and then we'll land gracefully or not, depending, and share some gifts with each other at the end. So that was my only plan. I like to do these things as open space, which is kind of where we are.
So I start a bit, and it will be full of kind of questions to you, Peter. Yes, is that okay?
You're in charge.
I think I heard your name or noticed you. The first time I noticed you must have been around 2002 when I considered going into consulting. Exiting my corporate career. I was a financial controller at the time, and I contemplated becoming a consultant. So I looked at books on consulting. Again, I had done that during my studies once, but Flawless Consulting was, but I couldn't connect to it. Maybe it wasn't written for consultants at all. You might say something about that. I know that it's your biggest bestseller, Flawless Consulting, a book that sold over 1 million copies, probably. You said last time we talked that you do not know exactly, but it must have been something around that. And I know that you also started a business around that, Designed Learning, which exists until today and seems to be very successful, admirably, designedlearning.com. You also have, I should mention, I took a look finally today at your website. I hadn't accessed it for some reason, but I want to highlight that I fell in love with several other books of yours over time. The first I really fell in love with was Stewardship. Can you forgive me for bringing up old books? Is that okay?
This is your moment on the other side of the moon. Go right ahead.
So this changed my life, literally. It was very influential on my own first books, I must say. So I used it a lot. And then maybe 10 years ago, I'm not sure when you published it. I didn't look it up. But, Community, another wonderful, wonderful book of yours, which transcends.
Why did those books mean something to you?
Yes, and why not the others, right? Because I have some of you.
The others, I'm not.
I think what
why not? Talk now about
what I found. What resonated with me more strongly in these books than in other books of yours, or in most other business books, in fact, is how neatly and freshly you talk about social dynamics. Not just in organizations, really, but everywhere. You already mentioned neighborhoods and society at large, in a way. So I think both of these books bring a fresh angle to social dynamics and the dynamics of people at work and people at life or in society. So what do you want to say about these two books, maybe?
Well, I think. What our work is to make social dynamics important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not interested in your life. I'm not interested in your story. Most ideas about the person is, where did you come from? Where are you going? Very individualistic. And our work is to make social dynamics at the center of collective life.
Good point. We both probably do not over accentuate leaders and heroes. We kind of probably share the same disbelief in heroic figures, right?
Well, in thinking that they matter, I'm happy for them and their mother, who's proud of them. But in terms of us organizing a future,
yes,
God bless them for taking the job.
Mm-hmm.
But our version of them extracts our accountability. And that's why we love them, because they let me off the hook. And so in a way, the book I wrote should have been An Escape from Freedom.
Ah, yes, that's a nice title. Yes.
No, but anyway,
Yes.
thank you for caring about these things. And
Yes,
all of us have the experience of something touching us at a certain moment.
Mm-hmm.
Has meaning for us above and beyond whatever the author had in mind. And I totally believe that the reader creates the book. And so you created 3 books of mine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Your work, you just mentioned this, is a lot about our attempt of escaping from freedom, right?
From accountability, yes.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. My favorite quote, if I wrote a book with you, and you like quotes, and then you call it a book, and would be, the dog ate my homework.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an American phrase. What happened? Where's your homework, Peter? Why aren't you a better student? Oh, I am a great student, but you don't understand, the dog ate my homework.
Yeah.
And so we're sophisticated, what our work in the world is. That's why we named the book, is to help people become accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And have agency. And if you do that, that's where meaning resides. And that's the payoff. What you guys do in the world, and we all do in the world, is to help people. And I have the spiritual, religious faith to feel people find a space for meaning. They're less violent.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's a better, and so that, it's not going well at the moment, but that's
Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, the book that most explicitly, the book of yours that most explicitly addressed this, let's say, the challenge of accepting one's freedom, our freedom back, and to accept that we can change the world and the futures, possible futures, in every moment that we encounter each other. That is your masterpiece, I would say. Confronting Our Freedom. Ryan and I talked about this in a separate episode of this podcast. A book that I again have to recommend. Peter Kostenbaum sadly passed away a couple of months ago at the end of 2024, and I'm very happy that you edited this book. I had the previous version of it as well, the previous edition from the 1980s or 90s, and I find that this is even more to the point. Yes. So this, I assume, is a work of the COVID crisis.
Well, it wasn't about that so much, although it occurred. It was just I felt that what Peter represented needed my voice with his as a.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first one I wanted to use his voice and bring it into being. But anyway, thank you. I mean, the fact that 2 of you have valued this means the world to me. Period.
If I could say something there too, you mentioned that the reader creates the book in that. And I had been aware of your work peripherally for a while. Ben Roberts, a friend who's a huge fan of your work. And then I've been introduced to what the 6 conversations were from Community. And then Neil says, hey, Peter Block just wrote a new book with Peter Kistenbaum, told me a year ago, probably more than a year ago. And then I said, okay, finally my birthday comes along. Okay, I'm gonna buy that book. And it kicked my ass. It seriously kicked my ass. And it's like, oh my God. It told me so much. It informed so much about what Niels and I talk about here in BetaCodex and paternalism, cause and effect, all those kinds of words that just blah, 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 and I read how's yes activated. I mean, I've gone on what I call a block party recently. So that.
Thank you. I have a grandniece, Priscilla Block, who's a very famous country music singer in Nashville.
Really? Okay, interesting.
All of her performances are called a block party. Welcome. Yeah, I think what the book might mean is that what you thought was true, you realized was a choice. And you use the word paternalism. Well, I thought, well, that's the way we are. No, it's not the way we are. It's been constructed. And I think what you do, Niels, and both of you do, is deconstruct what the world considers inevitable. Management, objectives, goals, master slave, boss subordinate. And what we're saying is that that's a choice and it's not working well. It's not an argument. I don't want to talk you out of anything. I want to stop giving attention to what doesn't work well.
And it's writing a story too. I mean, we talked about, and again, in this one, you know, we talk about journalism, and that the way that stories are told, that telling a different story is a way of changing how people think, or inviting them to different ways of thinking. You don't want to force thought on people, but if you put those ideas out in the world, have a sense of idealism. This is what could be. These are the possibilities of the world. I don't have to prove to you that these wonderful things have happened somewhere. I can say I can make those things happen into the world and tell stories that in media and all of those places that people look into that inspire. So that's
a big deal. Saying it, the narrative, it creates a context within which we. And right now, the dominant narrative has to do with fear and isolation, and who's wrong and who's right, and the social. Even to call the digital empire a social media, it's really a media that has enormous bias towards cynicism and despair, and look what's wrong with us. And so what we're trying to do is create an alternative narrative and say, well, maybe the most important thing the three of us do is decide what's news. Where should our attention go? And it's not useful for us to decide my attention should go with what's wrong. I'm my own journalistic entity. And so I can decide, what do I pay attention to? It doesn't mean I'm not a positivist. Nobody would ever accuse me of optimism. But I can decide to say, well, where are there places in which I'm a player instead of a consumer? And I don't care about scale anymore. Maybe it's 2 doors down. I have Laura, who's a neighbor of mine, who heals her walkable neighborhood. She knows everything that's happening. She's a busybody, is what we used to call them. Okay. And yet, when somebody over there has a dog and they don't have, Peter, would you go get some food and bring them some dog food, of course. And I think that's the shift in what constitutes news.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what's wrong. It's not holding people accountable. It's not disorganized by the judicial or legal system. And that's where the dominant news institutions have betrayed us, because they're still finding out what's wrong, and they celebrate autocracy. When a dictator occurs, someone who thinks I alone will decide everything that goes on, they find him mesmerizing. And the one thing that will undermine trying to find a gentle term, but I can't, but undermine the leader is
the great man.
Ignoring him.
Mm-hmm.
He feeds on his capacity to draw attention. And so why don't we put our energy into those things in which we have agency, we can touch. Some will be 2 houses down, like Laura told me they needed dog food. Others will be the city of Cincinnati. Others, will be German culture. But scale's not the point. The point is what matters. Let's look at it. And that's what
Matt,
about what your book, Mills, is about, trying to shift our attention away from the paternalistic colonial world. The word colonialism, to me, captures most of it. It was all done in the name of generosity. The British Empire colonized India because they thought it would be good for India.
The savages, right?
To help the noble savages, yes, to reclaim them. Exactly. And American, it's a return now in this country, where it's a return to these people are, instead of the modern term for savage, is terrorist. And anyway, and our point, the reason we're together today is not to change that. It's to realize there is an alternative, that all I have to do is see it.
Yes.
Against you, Niels. Okay? You're not an argument against alpha. You're an embodiment of beta.
Yes.
Uncertain, blah, blah, blah. And Brian, the same with you. You're coming back. And your future is to realize that music and performance and being productive in the world are one and the same
thing. Can I maybe kind of try to contradict you a little bit, Peter? What you just said, it relates to a conversation we had here during a session in Wiesbaden in this very space, and I had a couple of colleagues, over 12 colleagues all in all, including Silke, my partner, and other friends, and other consultants, and some people from companies and so on. And we talked, among other things, about why, let's say, our way of thinking, our way of addressing the beta way of thinking and creating organizations that are decentralized, democratic, and highly self-organized, why it's not, let's say, advancing more, why we are even seeing, of course, we are seeing a backslash in our societies against this kind of thinking currently, which doesn't confuse me, of course, because we have to look at the long term. However, we discussed a little bit, or I shared with the friends and colleagues here that I think we have to build the scaling thing that you said. you're not interested in anymore. I understand that, but
no.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, let me finalize the thing. I argued on Monday here that maybe we have to do what the others are doing, which is to build institutions as well. We need the journals. We need professorships. We need universities to teach the right stuff, which is a stupid thing to say, of course.
No.
We need associations. We need city councils.
Stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. I long for scale.
Okay.
And making that the point doesn't create it.
Yes.
I use the word aggregation.
Okay.
If you think of scale, how we find something to work and then do it 1,000 times more.
Yes.
I don't want to do it 1,000 times more, but I want to aggregate all of us in your country and mine that are see the beta way of being without arguing against alpha. And then I want to create a national curriculum in the United States that treats engagement as much more important than goals, objectives, outcomes, and problems.
Okay, we're on the same.
Common good taught in every business school in America. Okay, well, I have that longing that this becomes normalized, but I can't do it by saying this works. Let's do it in 1,000 places.
Yes,
every place will have to choose it, but I totally agree that I want this to be the dominant beta, to be the dominant way we think. I just don't want to take an answer and sell it because it worked in one place. And your beta, your alternative world, my confronting our freedom or stewardship or other
or community.
Our community argues that every community has to create its own future, but we're going to change the context in which they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thank you for what you said and for resisting and disagreeing, because it's always useful.
Yes, and I think this is one of the things that I have been struggling with. The question of how do we build the institutions to promote a more contemporary way of thinking. Let me put it this way: it's not about right or wrong. It's about
that question.
Yeah,
how do we build institutions or find places within existing institutions?
Yes,
because right now. I just had breakfast with somebody who runs a community college.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we have a community college system in the US. I hope you have one in Germany too. Where
no, but we have a different system. Yeah.
You have your own version. Anyway, and he said, everybody who applies gets accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to help them in the 2 years here at low cost, participate more fully in the transition in their own life. Because either people that didn't, were not high performers. And so I love the fact that we will create institutions that use a beta context. You don't use the word context, okay? But to me, that is extremely useful. It means nothing, but where the institutions can create themselves, but in a different context. And you're very clear that competition, doesn't work.
Yes. Yes, it's connection that we need to create, and
now I always say connection before content. I think I will now start saying connection instead of competition.
Yeah.
And this totally brings in the idea. You mentioned performance. You mentioned this connection, and the small group idea also that has come into being. This is all the music. The musical forms.
Jazz.
Jazz is now, because we have small groups, people who have have gained their own mastery in their own instrument that they play, and they play with each other, for each other, in service of an audience that they want to be with, who wants to be with them.
Well, and they live within a very specific structure called the chords. It's not, let's get together and do our own thing. Save me, Jesus. I'm doing my own thing.
Well,
but and structure, and what the beta world says is we need a different structure. We don't need something without structure. And music, to me, is so structured and so liberating all in the same time. Sorry.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And that, I think this is also what some folks don't understand about self-organization, right? And that is, it's not just everybody willy-nilly, and now some folks have kind of said, oh, you get to decide, you folks now hold you accountable on these small teams. No, the self-organization, that again, in open space technology, you have a form, you have a set of, you have a form, a structure, like a jazz form, like you have section A, section A, section B, section A, repeat the chorus, you got the melody, chorus, folks take solos, and you have to have a common language of, we know the American songbook, we can go anywhere and play with groups that we choose to play with. I mean, all of those forms, that's performance, right? What is that kind of performance? It's not, hey,
I don't know. We need the word performance. So I want to, anyway, thank you for what you're saying. This is a different kind of structure, and it's, I enforce it as brutally as any autocrat I know. So when I'm in a room, I say break into small groups, and middle-aged white men go like this. I didn't come for that. I don't give a shit what you came for. If you don't want to break into small groups, go sit in a goddamn small group. Don't say anything. Frown. We're glad you're here.
Did you already do this kind of thing? Really?
1,000 times.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I've done it with 5,000 people in the room.
Okay.
Who came for a totally different purpose. This isn't what I came for. I know. I'm not here to meet your expectations because they're too low.
Fly higher, man.
You're worshiping too small a God. If you came to pick up some tools, your workshop is already filled with tools you'll never use. And so you do this, and you use the leverage you have at the moment. I'm a keynote speaker, let's say, and break into small groups. I didn't come for that. I know you didn't. And if there's 300 people in the room and 240 do, thank you, God. And then you use the experience of the moment. So what music does, it gives us an experience in which no skills on my part as a listener are required. And now we're starting to hold music sessions that stop after 4. I think I mentioned this to you. Stop after 4 songs and say, we'd like you to talk to 2 people in this room near you that you don't know, and talk about, what is this music? How is it landing on you? And what does it mean to you? Where normally we do this after the performance. On my way home, wow, that was. Or it wasn't, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, halfway through the music, mm-hmm. the jazz, the structure, how is that? What's that? And then when I come back after 8 minutes, and the leader says, we'd like 3 people to say what struck you in the conversation you just had. Okay, I don't care what they say, bullshit. Leave me alone. I came for performance. Stop treating me this way. Thank you. And then we finish the performance, but everyone in the room has constructed the second half of that evening. And there's something powerful about that.
Yeah, totally. I wonder why nobody's doing that kind of thing. Makes total sense. Yes.
Well, if you would start your goddamn college, we'll make that part of the curriculum.
Absolutely.
Sorry for the language.
Are you also into jazz?
This is a not safe. This is a not safe for work podcast, by the way. So don't worry about the language.
But Peter, we didn't talk about this previously. So are you into jazz? Really? Is that a thing for you? Jazz?
I'm in the art. I play the piano, but my form has to do with sculpture and painting.
You do sculptures these days?
No, I love it. It's all I care about.
Ah, okay.
I showed you my room.
Okay.
All you would see is sculpture.
Ah, all right.
But I know
so you're a collector.
We started a hip hop center in Cincinnati because we had black youth. We're a dominantly black city. And what can we do? And we tried everything else. And we said, well, they love hip. So we started 20 years ago. So I've been a big part of inviting urban kids in and teaching them how to engineer, how to sing, how to lay down beats, how to do graffiti, how to do dance. And so in that sense, I know how healing it is. And each of us has our own. Mm-hmm. I type and talk. That's my art form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. That makes sense.
And this is the beta world, is to take music as essential. And so in the work we're doing to confront people with their freedom, to engage people in neighborhoods, we're inviting them to art events and then breaking them into groups while they're there. Mm-hmm. So art becomes the attractor for scale, but we're using the event as a way of converting customers into citizens, into producers, and to realize that whether it's art, whether it's whatever art form it is, sculpture, Ryan, your hands are always sculpting something. Okay? All you're missing is the clay. Okay. Anyway, this is what we're trying to imagine. This is what we're playing with, and we're the resistance. Anyway,
yeah, let's not be. Let's be mainstream without the masses so far.
Yes.
Let's be.
Let's decide what constitutes news. At an individual level, at a neighborhood level, at organizational level, where do we pay our attention? And then the organizations are waiting for meaning. Even during COVID, we had these, let's have a water cooler. So I was on a board of a .com company. Well, every week, let's have people gather digitally, virtually. But then they turned it into what's on your mind, not what are you creating and how do we fall in love with each other? And you can do that virtually. We do it all the time. And so I just think we're early stage imagining, and once we get it clear, I don't know.
I want to hop in there too. This is the idea of, again, one of the books that I've created. Is the answer to how is yes. This is the idea, the alternative narrative being one not of speed, scale, and all this kind of jazz, but one of idealism, intimacy, and depth, which is completely opposite from, don't bring your whole self to work. Don't do it. I don't want to know your whole self. I don't give a shit about your whole self. But this idea of being together in small groups, to be slow, to connect, to understand, and to come to agreement with what it is that each of us wish to have happen, not to have it steered from Donald, Joseph, Bill, whoever.
We're not waiting for leadership. You said 3 words. You said idealism, intimacy, and what was the third word?
Depth. I quoted some dude
hold
for that.
So it's depth over. So you say every time we come together, we say, what structure can we use? A concert, a board meeting, a town hall meeting, a staff meeting, okay, a problem-solving meeting, to say, well, what idealism means, what's our larger purpose? How do we become intimate with each other, which means vulnerable, which means talking about what's not working. We fall in love when we talk about what doesn't work. We don't fall in love. We talk about how proud I am of my children. Okay. And then you say depth. So for what we came together for, now that we know each other, trust each other, be accepted for our foolishness, let's go deep into and it's not personal depth. It's that we're in this business, we're in this podcast. How do we make it something that was important, changed my life?
This also, you're bringing up this, the musical small group also brings to mind a conversation that Niels and I had with his partner Silke in one of our other episodes about social density and about groups of folks.
Density?
Social density.
Wow, I love that.
Concept. And it is, I think the example was, and I may not do it justice, but it is that people.
Listen,
I'm apologizing myself.
Do it justice, you're going to ruin it and trivialize it. Now get on with it, damn
it. It is folks who are masters of their towers in a formal organization that have been, and again, is that they might not like each other. They might not have ever met. They might be in competing towers in a pyramidal structure. But when they are assembled into a room and confronted with their freedom to create what the business wishes to have, what the world wants to have out of their business, there may be some friction. There may be some, I didn't come from this place, but you're coming from somewhere else. And yet we are here to create something in the market. So how do we come together, and how do we connect and make something real?
Neil writes books. We know what to do. I'm not interested in what you don't agree with. And I made a living off of this. I remember I was at a Johnson & Johnson they're arguing over something between manufacturing, marketing, blah, blah, blah. And nothing was happening. I said, wait, stop. We're going to take the next 15 minutes and have each of you tell me, what do you blame these other 12 people for?
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody blames you for something, keep your mouth shut. I'm not interested in you. And after they went around, they saw the futility of arguing. Differences are fine. And they said, okay, let's make a towel with the red stripe that works. And so I think the fact that they come together with these strangers, and because they're in that room, and I love the notion of social density. I want to know more about where you came up with that phrase. I'm not interested in the fact we're different or what do we want to create together. And that's where people being vulnerable. When you ask them, what are your doubts? What's the crossroads you're at? What are we have this methodology of creating social capital or social density.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beta stance, because I'm not interested in your differences. I'm not even interested in your opinions. I'm interested in what your gifts are. I want to know what you came here to produce together. I want to know what you want from me, comma, blank. And let me tell you, that's why the Flawless Consulting book worked, is because I gave people useful structures that didn't get in the way, that said, people resistance give you a hard time. Don't argue with them. Just say you're angry, aren't you? Okay. I don't want to know how you analyze the world. I don't know what your symptom, your research is. Could we now tell me, the two of you or you and I, what do we want from each other?
Yeah. All else is little stories that come in the way of accepting our responsibility and our freedom, right? The little stories that deviate from our responsibility.
It does. It lets us off the hook.
Yeah.
And that's what's brutal about the work we're doing.
Yeah.
People to be agents.
Yeah.
Even in hard times like these.
Yeah, and it's hard to accept that ultimately we want to come together and accomplish something in spite of us having, well, you put this so brilliantly in confronting our freedom, right? The feelings of guilt that are important, and shame in a way, I think is a point, and accepting our own death, that is inevitable. And so I think it impacted me a lot that you also in stewardship, I think you already touch upon essential existentialist, as you and Peter Kostenbaum say, the essentials of being human, and that we ultimately want to come together, but our stories
get in the way.
Get in the way. Yes.
And there's something we made up anyhow.
Yeah. What I hadn't truly grasped before our conversation today is how profoundly you have thought about didactics or pedagogy or methodologies of learning. I hadn't quite understood that this was a common thread probably in your work. Is that true? Is that correct? Is that appropriate?
Yeah. That's when I read a book in 1985 and or 75 maybe, I don't know. And it changed everything. And it was about the inner game of tennis, in which Tim Galway realized if people want to learn tennis, he could help them without giving any instructions. Come here, teacher. I want to learn to play tennis. Thank you. He helped them be aware. Where's your hand? Where's the ball? And that's when I learned the difference between teaching and learning. And I want the teacher to know how to structure the room. And there's things I want to learn about, ways of thinking. So I want to listen to what you have to say, but I don't want to make that the point. And so what works if the purpose of a school is for people to learn?
Instead of testing and so on, which is...
Then we stop competing. Drucker, not Drucker, but the other guy was so brilliant.
Deming?
If Deming was so brilliant. And he says, we're here for cooperation. We're not here for competition. We've taught people. And we created schools that were competitive for a very specific reason. Because we wanted our children to grow into adults that would win.
And win what game exactly?
Exactly. Militarily is how the Prussians saw it. The Prussians were defeated by Napoleon. And what bothered them is their soldiers ran rather than died. And they said, this bothers us. Our soldiers should be people who are willing to compete to the death, compete to the end. And they say, we've got to get now this is just a metaphoric frame. We've got to get our children and take them away from their parents for 4 to 5 hours a day and call them children until they're 16 or 17 years old and teach them in the context of a school how to compete with each other. So in the first grade, all of a sudden, my friends became competitors. And I was taught that for me to get an A or a B, somebody had to fail. And so I needed failure. Okay? So regardless of the history and the blah, blah, blah story, we're trying to reconstruct the myth that competition produces outcomes. All it does is produce winners. It doesn't produce outcomes.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
You bring Maria Montessori into it also?
Or do we probably, right? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or do we?
You know what she said? When she became, she was the first woman ever to get a law degree in Italy. She was pretty special. 1896, Maria Montessori. And then anyway, she said the hardest thing is to teach teachers to stop teaching.
Which is what I thought you were going to say, Paulo Freire, the pedagogy of the oppressed.
Same thing. He was life-changing. He said that the problem is that we've internalized the story from the oppressor. And until we realize we're not who they say we are, nothing will change. And if we reclaim our own freedom, our own choice, we also do it for the sake of liberating the oppressor.
Exactly. And that piece of it gets lost so often in that, oh, you're oppressing me, and that this is the paternalist kind of thing like that. But then being with the other, I'm taking my freedom, come with me, right? Being the invitation to that, and that transformative play, which is the education, which is the learning, which is the becoming. And I think that's a tragedy that it gets lost. In
that the purpose of the child is to allow the teacher to learn. It's the transformation of the teacher that the child is there for. Okay, my children created me. People, you should be so proud of your children. It never made sense to me. Nobody wants to ascend into heaven based on their parenting.
Oh my God. Where am I going to end up?
Ryan, that's what you gave beautiful expression to. That the liberation of both parties are what's on the line. It's not why we do it. I don't do it to liberate you. Anytime I want to liberate you, it's just another form of making myself news, making myself central. Charity is, and there's a lot of work now about decolonizing philanthropy. So there's nothing generous about charity because of the news story I have about who you are and how much you need and how the church in town feeds 5,000 people a month, but not one mouthful changes the conditions under which those people live.
Because there's something wrong with them. If they're on the margins, they are a problem that needs to be fixed.
They are a need that needs to be served. And we have a social service industrial complex in every country that's dependent on people's neediness. And so we're all of these, once we get clear, then we know how to spend a day, too much to deal with. But you're right. There's no such thing as a homeless person. Okay? There's not. That's not who they are. I don't care where you're sleeping tonight, for God's sake. I want to know, and when I engage people in the street, I want to know, I say, what are you good at?
What are your gifts?
What are your gifts? I'm not interested in their needs. And I've tried in my own neighborhood. We have 30 or 40 African Americans that like to hang out in the park. People get nervous about that. And they wanted to call the police. And so I said, don't criminalize them. They said, okay, Peter, why don't you do something? So I got a group together and I said, why don't we find out who they are? Let's go down there. What do you do? What do you love to do? What's your name? for your gifts. And they said, no, Peter, we're not interested. We want to provide social services for them.
Make them dependent.
Make me feel, well, it allows me to care about them with making no demands on myself. And the truth is, the reason they're in the park together is because they don't have friends and family to support them. That's the only difference. I got people in my family that are just as vulnerable. They would be in the park without family. And so it's just, it's painful to me because here I am, my neighborhood, my park, and what I did was useless. I like it. I go by and, how you doing? They remember my name. But in terms of getting my little stupid neighborhood, upper middle class neighborhood, my project failed miserably. They're still trying to get the police to do something. Maybe read one of my books, it would have helped. I don't know.
Well, the newest book, Activating the Common Good, has a lot of stuff in there. The common good protocols, all that kind of stuff. I am so full of stuff. We are near the top of the hour. I want to open the space for both of you. We'll start with Peter since the guest. What did you wish to bring to this space today that you did not get the opportunity to do?
I always wish I had listened more. I have, I don't know, I always steal a period from the other end of other people's sentences. And so that's always what on my mind. And, but I don't know, it's been a blessing to me. And I'm grateful mostly for you taking it to places that I had not been thinking of. And I feel good that I've been able to live within your language, beta music, and think, oh, wow, there's something there that matters to me.
Niels, do you have a gift that you would like to give that you've not had the opportunity to do?
Oh my goodness! As we are talking today, I have to mention. I would like to mention somebody and who I think a close partner with Peter for some time, Marvin Weisbord, who passed away just a few days ago. And I think he should be mentioned in the context of what we are discussing here. I have no idea of what you actually did.
I was partner with him for 25 years.
Okay. Oh, okay.
A month ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You just when somebody dies, you deepen your understanding of what they meant to you. And how grateful we are, to have known Marvin. And we had a partnership, Marvin and Tony Petrella and I, where we saw the world quite differently. Mm-hmm. And we never worked together.
You did not?
Okay. We all had our own clients. We were connected in this this business for 25 years. That was fine, never large. It worked. And the time I felt happiest was Christmas, when we'd gather at Jim Maselko's house, and I'd say, oh, well, I'm not sure the work we're doing in the world means much. Okay.
You said that? You were the doubter at the time? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But I know that I've created a business with Marvin and Tony that supported the lives of 35 people, employees and their families. And I say, good enough.
That alone means something. Yes. So at the time, you already doubted or wondered about the impact you were making on your consulting?
The doubts have never. I don't have the doubts anymore, but
Okay.
I did for the first 72 years of my life.
Okay. Then what happened?
I don't know. I started listening to myself and realized you're a common asshole. Why don't you live into your gifts instead of being such a jerk?
Did you write a book around that time, possibly?
The reason you write a book is because you only write down things that that you think, but you can't live out. And it's interesting. And you must, you edit a book you wrote 30, 20 years ago. And I'm still saying the same things, but now I understand what I meant.
Mm.
It's like you're like a German philosopher, right?
Pardon?
You're like a German philosopher. You don't understand what it was. The first period, which is 2 pages, down the line, you don't understand.
Like any philosopher, really.
Yeah.
I think we should mention Marvin's, in my mind, great book, Productive Workplaces, which made me cry, really.
When you read it, or cry when he died?
No, I cried when I read it because I think the way he talked about Kurt Lewin and Frederick Taylor and Mary Parker Follett, that amazed me. The quality of his writing, I think it was astonishing. The reframing of these personalities made me change my mind. Yes,
Marvin joined us. He interviewed us in 1970, 69, whatever, because he was a reporter.
Yes.
He made his living as a writer. And then he interviewed Tony and I and learned about organization development. And Marvin always said, I started by writing about organization development, and then I became one. And he said, I want to learn what you guys don't know how to do. And then 2 years later, we were partners together.
Yes. He must have been a fast learner, right? And we should mention also he produced a jazz album just a couple of years ago, 2020 or 2022, something like that.
And it's all about the beauty of old people.
Yes, which is an amazing theme, I think.
It celebrates old people, which we are. He and I were.
Yes. The title of the album is, I forgot it. Can you help me out, Ryan? Did you look it up, the album?
No, I just that you mentioned that he was talking about old people. That reminded me of a song called "Old Folks," and you are all talking about coming together, and that reminded me of the Beatles' "Come Together" song, and then my favorite, the Who, the "Join Together" by the Who.
It's called the Senior Songbook. It's
Senior
Songbook.
And old people wrote it, and that became his life. The last 10 years, all it was music.
He truly had a portfolio career. I think he did journalism and photography, I think, something about that.
Mostly music. His wife was a photographer and an artist, Dottie.
Yeah. And then organizational stuff, large group methods, future search, and so on. And then he went on to music. I think that's an amazing career. I think it's a wonderful way of
I interviewed him in the book. There's something called the Flawless Consulting Handbook. So we redid it a year ago. And I interviewed Marv about how his world in organization development had connected to his decision to become a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Another book I need to buy, man.
We have to look that up.
I'm not feeling periods on the end of your sentences. I'm feeling ellipsis. That there's more to come.
So what's your experience of this time together, Ryan? What give and blah blah blah.
My experience is symphonic in many different ways, and the beauty of the improvisation we've had here. Inspiration to write some songs. There's all sorts of things that I wanted to bring that this containers unfortunately have been too small to bring in. And the last, just in general, the idea of Mary Parker Follett. You're talking about coming together and this idea of unity versus uniformity. The very different distinction there. To be in unity, not uniformity. I don't need to follow your rules and do exactly what you say. It is important to be together and be in unity, connect, deep, intimate, and be in possibilities. All of the words that I've I've taken in from you recently are coming to life. That is a real gift. And the final bit of that gift is a little bit of grief because of having lost Marv, Weisborn, who I never got to read much of, but now he's left a legacy of his literature. Now knowing some that you interviewed him. Also Harrison Owen, having lost Harrison last year.
A good friend.
And Stadler, who is kind of the mother of open space in that. And just realizing that it's so important to sit with the people who have learned from life and to grasp onto that life and do our best as we take responsibility for these moments to bring the work forward. And that's why I feel that the gift of having you come into our lives here, and you discovered the episode that we did on confronting our freedom a while back, that this is kismet. This is beauty incarnate. So that's my riff.
So let me add one other. That what I so appreciate about the two of you is that you know that ideas matter. Okay, and if there's anything we stand for in the world, and I feel that I wonder, so what? And I think, well, I knew how to translate ideas, and the first half of life, all I wanted to do was to do good work, make a living, and I did. And I found something I cared about that was useful. And then finally I realized that maybe I had a mind, I had a brain. And that's when I started writing, and I changed my whole experience of myself. And then now my goal, I'll never manage well. How many times I read your book, so it's never going to happen. But I do feel that I so appreciate with the two of you that the idea matters. You call it theory,
Exactly.
Okay.
Well observed. Yes, exactly. That's why I sometimes call us Levinists, according to Kurt Lewin, who said there's nothing as practical as good theory. Yes, but ideas is a good way.
Tattoo on my brain. There's nothing so practical as a good theory.
Yeah. And there's no freedom without structure. That's the other.
All those are tattoos that you guys are. Thank you for seeing me and inviting me into your world, and for caring about ideas. And we'll all translate them in our own way, but and I also feel that I learned to love the alpha world. I began kind of angry at it, counter-dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, well, that's who I am also. I wanted to make a living. I wanted to live a normal life. Wife, home, career, children. And I realized, so alpha is alpha. Let it be. Let's do beta. Let's create an alternative. Let's change the nature of the arts and music and their impact on institutional well-being.
Wow.
Excellent.
When it's over, it's over. Thank you both for the precious gift of your time and attention.
You were really desperate for a word, weren't you? You reach into the alpha world and say, excellent. Okay.
No. Actually, I hoped we would also talk about social density, but maybe we can have that conversation.
Give me one more sentence on social density.
Yeah, would that be something
right now? I can't wait.
Yeah.
You want to talk, man?
Let's talk about social density.
If you both have time, the precious gifts of your time and attention are still in this space. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, because of course this is about the search for words. I assume that you have searched for words intensely whenever you did write. How do you call it?
That's all that I am is a
yes,
search.
Yes. Yes, all this is just a language reprogramming service for ourselves.
So what does social density mean to you? Where'd you come up with that?
Yes, I found it somewhere, the expression, but it wasn't very important in the work that I read. But I got angry at alpha command and control, of course, as well, as you can guess. And so I wrote a couple of books against management and that kind of stuff, against command and control. And then my wife, when I turned 40, told me to be more positive about things, that I was not a young rebel anymore. I had to be positive about stuff. So I think I think that maybe we are similar in looking for ways to express the positive stuff that we want to talk about instead of bashing what's wrong and so on, which is feeble and trivial in a way. And this social density, this term, I think we have appreciated it, or we are using it to express what we are looking for, and I used the term peer pressure for a while in my stuff, which isn't very
the word pressure doesn't work.
Exactly. It is connotated in a negative way. Exactly. Yeah. So peer something was something I was looking for, and but of course we wanted to find something that related to not power over but power with, and people together to what you call aggregate, to aggregate, and aggregation, and non-paternalistic aggregation, of course, and connection instead of competition, which you mentioned as well. So we always looked, and we are still looking in a way for different ways.
That word gave you a container.
Yes, social density. Yes, because what I think is the impulse that we have often to get socially distanced. COVID is a perfect expression of that. Hierarchy gets us socially distanced from each other, or reporting, or targets and objectives and so on, the whole mechanics of command and control, but also the most conversational formats. I found one of the most beautiful things that you mentioned for me in this session was this idea to split concerts into, jazz concerts especially, and have this reflection episode where people can truly talk about, their experience
while it's happening.
And
rather than looking backwards, right?
So to level up, so to speak, for the second half. And so beautiful idea.
Beautiful. It honors the. Anyway, thank you, my friends. Any other thoughts? Thank you for I'll explore the social density. I saw the link.
Yeah, I think that's what democracy is as well, right?
Yeah,
citizenry and requires.
What you're looking for is a word that is useful, that doesn't come with baggage.
Yeah.
So when I wrote about stewardship, it was only used on Sunday morning raising money. Okay. And yes. I took it and said, and then I wrote a book on empowerment, and I could see, I had a sense of the wave that was coming and could see it before it hit the shore.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm doing that now with activism. I want to reconstruct what it means to be activist. It's not waiting for someone else's transformation. And I think that's what your love of ideas and your willingness to go.
Yes, we need to hunt the language, and I think it's.
You get a new word, then it takes you somewhere.
Yes.
Yes. I spend my life waiting for a new word.
Also, one thing that a colleague of mine from Britain, Robin Fraser, once told me, that if we want to create something new, we have to dare to create new words entirely, and I think that's something we always have.
Or old words in a new meaning.
That's one option, or to create entirely new words, which is challenging.
Yeah, as long as they're not too intellectual.
Exactly.
And then once they become popular, you lose them.
That is true. True.
Anyway, this is fun.
They take on an independent.
I sent you this connection to Christopher Emmerich or something in Berlin. I don't know if that, to me, Germany is one little place where everybody's within 6 feet of each other.
It is a bigger place, but yeah.
I know it is. I've been to places.
Well, you talk about Christopher, and one person we didn't bring into this, who I learned was pretty important to you, I had no idea, was Christopher Alexander.
Life-changing. One book, wrote 1976.
Mm-hmm.
Changed my whole. He gave me a way of understanding who I was, and the purpose of every effort is to find a quality of aliveness. And he talked about architecture, and I realized that gives me a language to understand what I'm doing. And he talked about if you want to build a building, a timeless way of building was his work. Even the carpenter hammering a nail has to do it with a quality of aliveness, no matter how small. It's not up to the architect. And a pattern, exactly. He opened a world for me. I actually met him once, and then, the world opens, and then you spend the next 10 years trying to understand what the fuck they're talking about.
The book is a pattern language, right?
Pattern language, yeah. I think A Timeless Way of Building is the name of his book.
Timeless Way of Building.
Yeah, and he said that as an architect, his only purpose is to create spaces that had a quality of aliveness. And modernism has a quality of deadness. The glass and steel architecture of Corbusier and all these other guys had no room for human habitation.
This is the red and the blue, Niels. It's what's alive and what's dead in organizations. Also, the phrase that came up in architecture was to be a social architect, right? So there's the economist, the engineer, the artist, and the social architect. These archetypes.
That's who we are.
Yeah, and I think socio-technical systems, social technologies that we're talking about to be architects in that domain. And you design an architecture, and then who lives within that architecture, it's their choice and their freedom to be in that, which is just, again, mind-blowing. And it's a connection that I had never made, and then read it, and the answer to how is yes.
Exactly.
You wanted to add something, Peter, on that?
No, I was just saying our work is to learn how to produce social density.
Yes.
Social capital, the word Putnam used. And I've come to realize it has to do with art, the walls, the room. Do chairs have wheels? And that's part of what Alexander opened up for me, was the notion that every piece in every room is a player in this, whatever you call your purpose of your life. Call it love, call it freedom, call it God, call it depth. What we're doing is trying to understand the architecture, structure, design. And that's why the last book I wrote, I put architecture and land central, journalism central, church central. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I know it matter.
Well, you might be right. You might be wrong. You might be crazy, right?
You have the book there, Ryan. You have the book there. Is that the one? I still activating the common good. Is that the book you just talked?
That is my effort to use the common good as a neutral, and say the way we connect to it has to change radically. We've got to stop protesting. It's a beta version of the common good.
Okay, I still didn't receive it. I bought it, but it still didn't arrive. So I'm looking forward to that.
You don't have to. We just saved you the trouble.
Well, then it's just the distinction, I think, is you're talking about the common good, and that there's a distinction in this. I thought Niels might find heretical, but the distinction is between the common good and the business perspective. That the business perspective is what has driven the industrial age and the information age, and then the Western idea of what success is and performance is. And that has taken away from what was before the industrial age, was the common good, the commons, before enclosure, before displacement, that bringing back the commons and the common good is really the work. And it is the meaningful work. And that, so, because when it's, and again, it's not evil. The business perspective isn't evil, which
it just is.
It just is. It's like complexity is. and again, how do we wrestle with what the business perspective gives, and also what it takes away from the common good?
It's fine for business, but let's reclaim. Anyway, damn it, you got that from reading my book. Now I know why I wrote it. Shit. That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. It's perfect. It's exactly what led me needed. You know, you write a book because you can't not. And I have no body. I once asked a therapist, what will break in me first? She said, your knees. And I said, why? Because you're not grounded in any way at all. You're tall. You live in your fucking head. You don't have a body. And I thought,
that was a normal doctor who told you that?
No, a physical therapist was helping me.
Sounds more like a shrink or something, but yeah, okay, a tough one.
No, she was a, but I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. And so, then anyway, you try to make use of it and take it and realize, okay, got it. And so I write a book to get these haunting thoughts out of my mind. Good. Now I've created space to think about something else, and they're all.
That's what books are for, right? For the writer.
And of the author. If anybody reads the fucking bonus.
Well, that book requires. So the Commoner's Guide. That was the other one you said that was this should be next to the Bible. What's his name, Rob? See, but they all focus on the outcome. The commoner's world writes about the way the environment should be, the water, the land, the exploitation. They have no idea how to create that. They have no instinct towards social capital, social density, social art. They're still running conferences. They're still giving speeches. They think more research is useful. And that's where they're waiting for us to take ourselves seriously. That's drilling into your brain, Niels. I can see it.
I did not quite grasp it, I must admit.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's content, and you say content before connection, or connection before content. Well, the world is organized around content, and it's useful content. I want to know what the CO2 levels are in the atmosphere. But knowing that, and you write about this, my glancing through what would these great people do, okay, is they say, look, knowing something doesn't change it. And there's some great quotes there that, after you have an accident, you look back on what caused it. It doesn't keep you from having an accident.
That is true.
And so analyzing how it went when it's over is too late. How was the concert? It's too late. I want to ask that question in the middle. And anyway, that's my best shot at responding, Niels, to your but let it be.
I'm very much looking forward to that book. And again,
let's do another conversation on that, even if nobody's watching.
And then I will review this as a video to maybe understand what just happened. Thank you very much.
All right.
You guys
thank you for being here.
A blessing.
This was lovely. Thank you very much, Peter. See you again soon, hopefully.
Well, I'm going to end the stream. We can cool down for a moment in the backyard, in the purple room, if you will. Thanks, everybody who's still out there with us after an hour and 24 minutes, the marathon. Be well, be good, do something meaningful.
There used to be a Bob and Ray